Welcome back to the cabin I'm building. Today's subject is going to be solar charge controllers. Um, and this is from the perspective of somebody that really doesn't know very much about this stuff. So full disclosure, I was sent one by a company called Bateria, and I'm very grateful for that to try out. I don't have a lithium iron phosphate battery here in this cabin yet. That's probably where I'm going to go eventually. That seems to be the way to go. As long as you can keep them above freezing, it is definitely the thing to do. But what I'm going to do for today is I have a battery that is actually I just replaced in my truck. It wasn't completely dead. It was getting weak. Like I noticed during the winter and cold days, it was a slow start, and I didn't want to be stuck without one, so I did replace it. They're a more expensive type of battery than your regular car batteries are. It's a AGM battery, which means advanced glass mat, I think, something like that. Anyway, so it's different than step up from your regular car battery, but it's definitely not a lithium battery. The good part about this charge controller that I have is it'll handle uh, regular lead acid, it'll handle AGM batteries like this one, and it will also handle lithium iron phosphate. So when I do get a bigger battery, I don't have to worry about changing the charge controller over. I know enough to be dangerous when setting this stuff up, which is the good part about what I'm doing, because this is, I hope, or should be, idiot proof. I guess we're going to find out together. So you can see the cabin's insulated now, and I'm working towards doing the finishing of the inside. That'll be the next part of the series. If you want to see more about building this off-grid cabin in the future, please hit like and subscribe. I've got some upcoming projects which are going to be pretty fun. I'm going to try to make an outdoor bathhouse, collecting rainwater, that type of thing to go along with this. And I feel like this subject about resiliency and, this off-grid cabin and things like that. I mean, this isn't where I live full-time, but given the current environment we're in, the political climate, I don't want to get into that discussion too much, but the political climate we're in, things that are happening, I think it's really important to have something like this, or at least be resilient enough so that you can react to if things happen. I believe that the day is coming when it's not just a matter of, oh, there's a bad storm, or the power's out, or the grid is down for whatever reason, things like that. There could be other things on our horizon which frankly make me a little bit nervous. And so this is why one of my motivations for doing this kind of a thing, so that maybe it's not me living here, but it could be a family member, it could be friends, could be somebody else staying here temporarily. There's a whole lot of reasons why you would want something that is not dependent on any external inputs. So it provides its own water, which will be the case with the bathhouse and whatnot. It provides its own power. It provides its own things that you need to survive. And so power is what we're talking about today. And in my previous videos, you've seen I put up a solar panel now that does charge a power station when I have it in here, but I do want to have a battery system that I can leave in the cabin permanently to run the basics anyway, eventually. And the power station may be for more augmented use at different times, and likely will be what I use quite a bit of the time, but it'd be pretty handy if the battery was just kind of a permanent feature of what I'm doing here. So on with the show. So what I actually have here are two solar charge controllers. The idea of these is your solar panel plugs into them on one side, and the other side it plugs into your battery and your load. Why do I have two? Well, I originally bought this guy first. So this is a very cheap charge controller I got from Temu. I haven't never hooked it up. It's because I got the other one shortly afterwards, and I'm kind of glad I didn't, because it's a little questionable. This one is a PWM, pulse width modulation. That's what that stands for. charge controller. They are a lot less efficient than the other type, which is MPPT, which stands for maximum power point tracking. And so I never did hook this one up. The one that I did get from Bateria is a PWM, and this will handle, like I said, the lithium iron phosphate as well as AGM gel batteries. And it's what I like about this one is it's for a small system. I mean, this is a 20 amp charge controller, and what I like about it is it's a very, very simple thing to operate and very simple thing to set up. It's not complicated at all. So we're going to go through the process of what it's going to take to hook this up to my current solar panel and hook it up to the battery, and we're going to see how things go. Now, why would you want an MPPT charge controller over a PWM? They do cost a little more money. In this case, though, this is on the smaller end of the scale, so this is a smaller solar setup that I have. It's not ridiculously expensive, though, compared to everything else that you're spending. When you consider the money you spend on the solar panel and when you spend on the battery and everything else, this is a relatively inexpensive part of that system. So it probably makes sense to go with a better type. MPPT are higher efficiency. They a little bit more complex, a little bit bigger. One of the big differences is that PWM controllers, they will pull down what your solar array is providing to match the battery, what it needs to put into the battery. Whereas MPPT will take the excess voltage, so if the voltage is coming higher from your solar, like when it's cold, and they'll convert that to more amperage. So they become a lot more efficient at converting your solar energy from your panels to be able to charge your battery. That's really kind of the big difference. MPPT is a lot newer type of technology. PWM's the older style, and I guess there's limits on PWM if you got into a bigger solar system. So if I did expand the whole system, then I might have to flip to an MPPT anyway. So this seems to be the best way to go. And I think if you're just starting out and you're building from scratch, there's really no point unless it's a super cheap off-grid single panel, single battery camping type situation. Maybe a PWM is fine, but for a more semi-permanent or permanent installation, I'd probably go with MPPT. Okay, so let's see what we got. User manual, that's helpful for me, especially. Sure. Oh, came with a couple of cables, and they're SAE cables. You've seen me talk about these here before, and this is kind of what I'm using for my whole setup because they're pretty simple and universal. That's the unit there. So from what I understand, it's basically, this is really super simple. You have an input side, so this plugs into my solar panel, and you have an output side that plugs into my battery, which should be connected to my system. That's it. Now, I'm sure there's going to be a couple of things I've got to fool with on here, but don't imagine it's a big deal. So the first thing I'm going to do is just go right ahead and mount it. I know normally you would just plug it in and test it out and that kind of stuff, but I'm just going to go ahead and straight up put it where I need it to go. That way it's not dangling in the way. This looks like a pretty good spot. So this is my battery. As I said, this came in on my truck. It's like, well, 5, almost 6 years old now. And I did replace it. I replaced it because it was a weak start. It wasn't because it wasn't working. It should be fine. It should work fine, but I guess we're going to find out. Anyway, I got these connectors. Negative, positive. So that should be pretty straightforward. I think I picked them up from, it was probably Temu or somebody like that. Anyway, it was pretty cheap, but it seemed like a really convenient way of connecting this. And I'm just going to check the battery with my meter. 12.38 volts. Ain't bad. It's been sitting out in the garage for quite a while, so it should be okay. So I've made a cable with a that guy on one end, and the positive going to the exposed one. And then on the other end, I have a couple of these poorly crimped lugs. Then I'm going to put on the battery. And we're going to keep it with, you know, the obvious red, positive, black, negative. These little battery clamp dealies, pretty handy, and they were not very expensive. Like, I want to say in the realm of like $3 kind of thing. Like, it really was a pretty good deal. There. So now that battery is hooked up to that. So now the moment of truth. What happens when I want to make sure that the red wire and the red wire, so that is correct. Oh, it lit up. 12.3 volts. Okay. Now, I read the instructions. Hold that in. Press it to AGM. Hold that in. There. 75%, 12.3 volts. So the question is, now, that one comes from my solar panel. What happens when I plug that in? Let's find out. Please don't burn the place down. So again, I'm just checking my red goes to my red. It does. Now, it's not particularly sunny out, but it is producing something, so. E10. I'm going to assume that means error 10. Let's find out what that is. Okay, so I think I know what my problem is. Do not exceed PV volt VOC request for the following. PV VOC cannot exceed 30 volt for 12 volt battery and 60 volt for 24 volt battery. Well, I think I've got 36 volts or something like that, 35 volts off the panel, and I have a 12 volt battery. So again, from somebody not a solar expert, if I had a 24 volt battery, this would probably work fine, but I don't. So back to the drawing board. So this is probably a terrible idea, but for the purpose of testing out this solar charge controller, I've effectively made a 24 volt battery by wiring these two batteries in series. The other smaller battery is also out of another car. It wasn't good at the time, so we're going to plug it in and into the charge controller and see what the charge controller reads, and then we're going to try the solar panel. See what happens. Okay, let's see what the charge controller says now. Well, it's saying 24.7 volts. That's good. I don't know if that's an AGM battery. This is like a terrible idea. Don't ever do this, putting mixed type batteries and everything else together. I know this is bad, and I don't know what I'm doing. But so we're going to try the solar panel. Well, I didn't get an error code, and it's working. Wow, okay. Give me 26.4 volts. So the panel puts out like 35 or 36 volts. So what has happened here is this charge controller has stepped it down to, now it's 20, well, it would be 27 volts now. I'm only getting 0.6 amps, which isn't a lot right now because it's kind of cloudy. There's no sun actually on the solar panel, but it is working. So it is actually charging these two batteries together. Interesting. Okay, so now we know that system seems to be working. Now I can't use both of these batteries like this to run the cabin or anything because everything I have is like 12 volt. So I got to think about this a little bit. I may have to just kind of rearrange how things are hooked up if I go to use the batteries and not charge at the same time. I don't know. Anyway, I'll figure it out. So there you have it. As I said, I've got my, it is working. It looks like it says 28.8 volts right now that it's feeding the batteries. And the way I got it to work was to use two batteries to put them in series. So it's effectively a 24 volt battery-ish. And the charge controller will step down enough voltage out of the 35 or 36 volt panel to charge these. It won't take a 36 volt panel like I've got and charge a 12 volt battery. The good part is that it gave me the error code and it has enough protection built in to stop me from blowing stuff up and burning the place down. And I think that's why you don't want to get the super cheap Temu battery charge controller, which was my first plan. Kind of glad I didn't do that. I don't know if that stuff would have worked. Like, who knows, right? This seems to be working. I don't know how I'm going to operate with the two batteries or how I'm going to handle that yet, but this will at least charge the two batteries together. And then if I can kind of configure a way to switch them over to a single 12, then that'll run everything I've got, and that'll be easier. But it's not a great setup. I'll come up with something better, I'm sure. But for the purposes of what I'm doing here, Bateria, I'll have links in the description. Sometimes they sell these charge controllers, yes, but they also sell a whole lot of other accessories for hooking up solar panels and different adapters and different cables and even long run cables. If your solar panels are a long ways away, they've got 100-foot sets. They got all kinds of stuff. Anyway, I'll put a link to these charge controllers and stuff in the description. And you might want to check them out if you're looking for weird types of accessories. They even sell like SAE to Anderson connectors for your power stations if you have them, or to XT60, and they have different configurations of those as well. This is the 20 amp version. There's a 10 amp version, the smaller version, which, a 10 amp, and if you have a 100 watt panel and that would be fine. That, you know, that's more than enough. And the 20 amp is what they sent me, and that's good. I've got a 200 watt panel, and it's a 36 volt, so it's gonna, if I was getting 200 watts and it was 36 volts, it would still be well under the 20 amp rating of this charge controller. This gives me some flexibility in the future. So if I wanted to expand the system or add on more or do different things, I can do that. And what I really like about it is for people like me, not an expert in this at all, it's more or less idiot proof. There's two wires. This one goes to your battery. This one goes to your solar panel. It figures it out. And if you do stuff wrong, as we can see, it tells you you're doing it wrong and won't let you burn the place down. So I do appreciate that. So again, so far so good. There's like zero heat coming out of this thing. I do like the simplicity of it. It's this is nothing I really want to fiddle with. This isn't like a big, the whole solar thing isn't the big hobby. That's not what I'm trying to do here. So if you're looking for a very simple solution, if it's for like an off-grid cabin like this, or if you're looking for, say, your RV, you know, a camper, any kind of semi-mobile, because it's not a big setup, probably a good thing to look into. I'm dumb. So I was sitting here trying to figure this out. You know, I have a 36 volt panel and this charge controller, and a 36 volt panel. I needed a 24 volt battery to be able to get this to charge. Otherwise I got the error, you know, PV over voltage, which is good. That's what it's supposed to do. So my solution was add another battery in series, make it a 24 volt battery. That worked, that charged, but I can't use 24 volts here in the cabin because it's, you know, the diesel heater and the light, everything here is like based on a 12 volt system. So how do I get 12 volts to the system when I have a 12 volt series other than rewiring this every time? Well, it's simple. You wire one battery, which was the one battery I intended on using anyway, to the system. And forget about the other one. The other one's only there to sit there to call this a 20. This isn't a very good battery anyway. It was pulled out of our SUV a while back for not being a good battery, for like not starting the car, but it shows up as enough to make this thing charge. So that's its whole purpose in life here. So this will work fine. It's a little janky, but a little bit sketchy. Probably won't burn the place down. Probably fine. The charge controller seems to be happy with this system. You know, I am running 12 volts right now off of this and not off of the power station, and seems to be good. The diesel heater showing me that it's got 13 volts, so I could turn that on if I wanted to. So anyway, that's how you charge a 12 volt battery with a 36 volt panel and a charge controller that requires you to be charging at 24 volts. You just add another one in series as a sacrificial battery, I guess, to charge. I don't know what you want to call it. Anyway, problem solved.